comes across to Saladin and his contemporaries as an extraordinary monarch. He is described as an extremely courageous and clever warrior.
The Muslim army fled in confusion from Richard's ferocious attack. After the carnage, despite overwhelming odds, Richard found himself victorious again.
By taking the city of Acre, the city which had dominated, as it were, world news for the last 2 years, and then winning the Battle of Arsuf, Richard had, within a short space of time, destroyed the reputation that Saladin had built up over several decades of being an unstoppable, successful politician and soldier.
With Saladin now defeated, Richard entered Jaffa unopposed. Behind the thick castle walls, Richard's surgeons tried to keep the wounded Crusaders alive. Many of these exhausted men would now be expected to march inland to Jerusalem. Hundreds had fallen, and every death made Richard's quest more and more difficult.
Any major victory by the Crusaders, such as the one at Arsuf, shouldn't blind us to the reality of their very precarious existence at all times in the Holy Land. Because, after all, they were a minority. They always were a minority.
Inside Jaffa, Richard began to realize how vulnerable his crusade was. Instead of marching swiftly on Jerusalem, as his followers urged, he once again decided to attempt secret negotiations with Saladin.
Trying to capture Jerusalem simply by military means is phenomenally dangerous. It will be much better if Saladin can be persuaded by diplomatic means, by negotiation, to allow Jerusalem to be handed back to the Christians.
Richard wrote a private letter appealing to Saladin's famous generosity.
The Muslims and the Crusaders are bleeding to death. The country is utterly ruined. Lives have been sacrificed on both sides. The time has come to stop this. Jerusalem is for us an object of worship. It must be consigned to us.
But the Holy City was also sacred to Muslims.
Richard does not know just how centrally important Jerusalem was to the Muslims. He probably overestimates his ability to persuade Saladin to give up this city, thinking it doesn't mean so much. Saladin has to dissuade him, persuade him. I know Jerusalem means as much to us as it does to you.
Saladin sent his brother Al-Adil with his response to Richard's request.
Jerusalem is ours as much as yours. Indeed, it's even more sacred to us than it is to you. Do not imagine that we can renounce it or waver on this point. The land was originally ours, whereas you have only just arrived.
Jerusalem was a sacred Islamic site where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven. Saladin would never give it up. His status in the Arab world depended on retaining it. But he was completely unprepared for what happened next. Richard and Al-Adil continued to meet and became close friends. They discovered they had a great deal in common.
Men like Richard and Al-Adil both believe they have been born to rule, to lead armies, to enjoy hunting, to enjoy hawking, to enjoy fine horses, to enjoy music. They have so much in common that once they get talking, it's not surprising they appreciate each other's qualities.
Richard began to call Al-Adil brother and knighted his son as if he were a European prince. The massacre at Acre seemed a distant memory.
Once he has met with Saladin's brother Al-Adil, he felt these were not merely stereotypical nightmare figures of some horrible, hideous alien people. And from that moment on, the rest of the crusade, there is nothing remotely approaching the slaughter of the garrison of Acre.
With Richard on crusade were his wife Berengaria and his sister Joanna. His sister would be an essential part in his new diplomatic thrust for the Holy City. Al-Adil sent a letter to Saladin outlining a radical new peace proposal. The King of England suggested Al-Adil should marry Richard's sister Joanna and jointly share the Kingdom of Jerusalem.
This, on the surface, is a terribly strange idea. A Christian princess marrying a Muslim prince. It's a very interesting tack by Richard. I think what he's doing there is trying to divide off Al-Adil from Saladin. He's suggesting that Al-Adil should become the ruler of Jerusalem in his own right. He's trying to exploit tensions within the Muslim camp.
Richard the Lionheart was happy to negotiate with Al-Adil, but he neglected to consult Joanna. Joanna refused to marry a Muslim. And Al-Adil refused to convert to Christianity. The wedding was off.
She was a divorced woman in the first place. She hoped to marry some kind of Christian count.